It is a cold night in 1858, Adams County, Mississippi. In the big house at River Bend, a poor white farmer is being offered a wife as part of a bargain. Eli Turner sits before Silas Hemphill's desk, hat twisting in his hands. The planter taps a ledger. 15 acres in the East Field, Hemphill says. Mule, seed, credit. You take that big colored woman as your wife and give me children. They're mine-in-law. You keep your land. Through the window, Eli sees her, a tall black woman lifting a sack of corn, shoulders thick with work. In the book, she is Dinah, female. In the quarters, they do not say her other name when whites are near. 3 men before you tried, Hemphill adds. 1 went blind inside a month. 1 lost his arm in my gin. 1 dropped dead in her doorway. You still want those acres, Turner? Eli thinks of the stony patch he rents, of his father dying owing money, of the thin crop that nearly failed. He signs the paper. It uses the word agreement, never marriage. By dusk, a tired Baptist preacher from Natchez has read a few verses in the yard. No ring, no feast. Dinah stands beside Eli in a washed dress and head wrap. A small bone charm at her throat is snatched off at Hemphill's order and slipped into her pocket by a younger woman when no one looks. 2 brief lines record the day. In the ledger, Turner, Eli, use of Dinah, female about 28, plus 15 acres Eastfield. In the preacher's notebook, blessing spoken over union at River Bend. Later, Eli walks to a low cabin by the slave street, a tallow candle in his fist. Behind him, the overseer laughs. Earn that land tonight, Turner. The door closes on the joke. Inside, the room is close. Rope bed, crate, Bible, smoke, and sweat. Dinah sits on the edge of the mattress, hands on her knees. The candle throws her shadow up the wall. Reckon we're man and wife now, he says. She studies him. You know how many men came through that door before you, Mr. Turner? Her voice is low and rough. 4. 1 walked out and never saw straight again. 1 went to the gin and left his arm in the teeth. 1 fell right there in the frame 'fore he touched me. Last 1 drove his wagon to the river and never came back. Rivers got him. Eli's stomach tightens. You saying that's on you? I'm saying every man that comes to this bed for land or favor has something follow him in, she answers. I don't call it. I don't control it. But it don't let him finish what he came for. She lifts the hem of her dress just enough for him to see a thick, pale scar running down from her chest into the cloth. This ain't from any husband, she says. This is from a table and a knife and a doctor who thought he could cut babies into me. Eli's shoulders touch the wall. Outside, a dog barks once and goes quiet. He tells himself it is talk to scare him. Yet his hand shakes around the candle. For a heartbeat the flame flares, and their faces stand sharp. The man who signed for a few more furrows, and the woman whose body has already cost 3 men their future. In Hemphill's ledger this night will be a neat line of ink. What Dinah is about to say when the light goes out will never be written there. The candle's flame hangs between them for a moment, and we let it hang there. Hold that room like a paused frame, her hands on her knees, his fingers tied on a tallow stub, smoke trapped under a low-board ceiling. 2 people caught in 1 thin line of a planter's book. Now step out of that room with me. Before we go deeper into that night, think about where you're listening from. Maybe you're in Mississippi, maybe far away, but some of you have family from river country. Maybe you grew up with scraps of talk, a big woman somewhere back in the line, a man who tangled with the wrong woman and was never the same. Those scraps are cousins to this story. School lessons rarely keep them. They live because somebody refuses to let them die. Now, let's be plain. This is not just a tale about a poor white farmer and a heavy black woman thrown in with a few extra acres. It is about what happens when a whole order decides a black woman's body is equipment, a womb for profit, and discovers that the body and the ground under it will not fully obey. On paper, Dinah looks simple. In one surviving Riverbend account book from the late 1850s, there is a neat line. Dinah, female, about 28, strong field hand, breeding prospects, poor so far. No mention of scars, no mention of men who did not live out the year. In a Natchez church record, a cramped note speaks of an irregular union between poor white tenant and colored woman on plantation near the river. No names. Later, a post-war report from a Freedmen's Bureau agent mentions a colored woman called Dinah, formerly on River Bend, reporting repeated abuse and strange accidents among men attempting to force her into cohabitation. And in 1937, a young interviewer for the WPA sits at a kitchen table with an old woman named Martha Johnson. On the carbon copy of that interview, in faint pencil, someone has written, "Claims to be niece of Big Dinah from River Bend." Martha tells him, "They give her to a poor white man for more land, but he can't do what the master want. Same as the others. Men get broke or drown or die right there. Folks say the river know her name. So what we have is not a polished legend, but a trail, a planter's line, a church scribble, a government phrase, an old woman's voice still shaking at what her eyes saw. Together they sketch something the Old South did not want written clear. A black woman whose body refused the use it was bought for, and men whose fates twisted close to that refusal. Back in that low room, the candle is, still burning. Eli has not yet decided what kind of man he means to be. Dinah has not yet told him how she got that long scar. For her warning, "You're not the first. To carry its full weight, we have to leave them waiting and go back to a younger Dinah, on another place, under another name, before anyone called her Big, before the river ever heard of her at all. She did not begin as Big Dinah. On Cypress Row Plantation in Louisiana, she was Dinah May, long-armed, heavy-boned, not yet the broad figure overseers counted as prophet. Fields ran to a bayou, nights held chains and coughing. Old Nanny, the midwife, later told a government man the baby's heart beat so hard in my hands, I thought it was beating at me. The child barely cried, only stared up as if the room were already behind her. As she grew, Dinah May almost never took sick. Fever swept the quarters, children faded. She hauled water, wiped brows, then went back to the rows with only a drag in her limbs. A body that stayed upright meant money. At 16, the ledger changed. Beside her name, Colonel Ransom wrote, "Good breeding prospect. Less time in far fields, more near the cabins, always where a door could be shut." The first man was Noah, a quiet worker sent to her bed because a finger pointed. A week after he began sharing her pallet, he fell from a cotton wagon, shattered his back, and never walked again. In the cabins, they did not say accident. They said, he lay with Dinah and the world struck back. Next was Isaiah, younger, full of chatter, ordered to keep her company. Soon he dropped in the dust, clutching his head. One eye rolled white. The doctor named it a stroke. The people named it another warning. Men started to edge aside when she passed. Some touched tongue and air in an old sign. Old Nanny tied bone and red thread and slid it under Dinah's dress. "They poured too much hurt through you," she whispered. "Let some of it catch here instead." The third man chose himself. Mr. Cole, the overseer, lurched to her door one night smelling of whiskey, belt loose. She braced and shoved him back into the storm wind. By dawn, a pecan tree lay across his roof. They pulled him out from under a fallen beam. The plantation book said, "Roof collapse, unfortunate." The whispers said, "He went after Dinah, and the house fell on him." For the owner, this was nuisance. For the quarters, it was a story sewn to her name. Ransom took the simple cure. Sell the trouble. In a Natchez list, you can still read, "Negro woman, Dinah May. Strong, no living issue." She passed like a bulky tool from one white hand to another, then onto River Bend. While her body was being priced and weighed, another life was thinning a few counties east. A narrow-faced white boy, Eli Turner, watched his father lowered into clay and the family patch signed over to a storekeeper. In his 20s, Eli drifted from place to place, hiring himself to planters who advanced seed and bacon and kept the books locked. He slept in sheds, bent over the same soil as the men in chains, yet never dared name them brothers. When he signed on at River Bend, he thought only of getting a few acres back under his feet. One afternoon, he saw a large woman hoist a sack of cotton nearly her size and ease it down. She glanced at him once, measuring, distant, and turned back to the row. He did not yet know her story. She did not yet know his. The ledger would soon write their names on the same line. The first night he came to her door, with the folded agreement still crackling in his pocket. The light in the cabin was a single tallow stub, making more shadow than brightness. Dinah sat on the edge of the narrow bed, hands on her knees, eyes steady on him. Outside, someone laughed low. Then a boot scraped away down the yard. Eli cleared his throat, tried for a crooked smile. "Guess they expect us to get started," he muttered. She did not move. Slowly, she untied the faded headscarf and let it drop, then drew the collar of her dress aside just enough for the candle to find the pale line that ran from breastbone down, disappearing under coarse cloth. "This," she said, fingers resting lightly on the scar, "ain't from any man's hand that came to my bed. This is what a doctor did when the last master wanted more babies, and none came. They cut me to see what was wrong. When they were done, every man that touched me wrong met something worse than me." He tried to laugh it off, voice too high. "You telling ghost tales to scare me gentle?" "I'm telling you," she answered. "Every time a man comes to me for land, for numbers in a book, not for me as a breathing soul. Something walks in behind him. I don't call it. It just knows the way." Silence sat between them. The candle hissed. Eli stepped closer anyway, because 15 acres of dark soil waited behind his eyes. He touched her shoulder. Her skin was warm, alive, not monstrous. He felt his own pulse slam against his ribs. His chest tightened, ears ringing. It was as if his own body rose up against him. "Can't hardly breathe," he gasped, stumbling back. "Damn heat." He pushed away from the bed, meaning only to reach the door, get a lungful of night air. The moment he lurched clear, a rusted iron hook dropped from the overhead beam and struck the mattress where his head had been. The sound made the walls jump. Dinah turned, looked at the dented straw tick, then at him standing in the doorway, white as flour. "You see?" Your voice was tired, not triumphant. "I warned you. I didn't move that iron. But whatever's been following these men, don't like them coming near me for a price." "Old wood," he snapped, more to himself than Dunay. "Rotten rafters, that's all." For 3 nights he found reasons to sleep on a bench, boots still on. Yet each time he made up his mind. Tonight I'll go in, do what I promised. Something went sideways. One evening, reaching for a lantern in the shed, he set his hand on a coiled snake and took its strike in the wrist. The fang marks puffed and burned, but by dawn the swelling eased. Another night, heading toward her cabin, he caught his heel on a warped board, drove a long nail deep into his foot, and spent 2 days limping the rows. In the quarters, people noticed patterns without saying the word. Martha, thin and sharp-eyed, watched him pass. "Uncle Eli, maybe you ought to leave Aunt Dinah be," she whispered, when no white ears were near. "Men that go her way don't walk straight long." He rounded on Dinah finally, anger hiding fear. "What you doing to me? You praying against me? You sending that, whatever it is, after my neck?" Her gaze went hard then, old hurt lighting behind it. "You think I ain't tired of men falling and folks blaming my breath," she said quietly. "I want no more bones on my back. I wake each night wondering who it'll take next. You're the first one I spoke truth to before anything happened. That's all the power I got." That night, through the thin wall, Eli heard Martha's whisper floating from the women's side. "They say Mr. Hemphill's near done waiting," Vanaskazala camoose. "If Turner can't make no babies on Big Dinah, Master's fixing to find another way. And when he starts fixing, ain't nobody on this place safe." The candle in Dinah's room flickered once and went out, leaving them all listening to a future that was already turning toward them. By late winter, the numbers in Silas Hemphill's ledgers told a story he did not like. On one page, bales of cotton, barrels of corn, cost of nails and salt. On the next, Dinah, breeding woman, no issue. Turner, arrears on seed, tools, meat, his thin mouth flattened. "She eats like 2 field hands and brings me nothing," he said in his office, tapping the column with the end of his pen. "You enjoying my charity, Turner?" Eli stood hat in hand, shoulders tight. "I'm working my rows, sir. Weather's been— I didn't give you those acres for weather," Hemphill cut in. "I gave them for results." That Sunday, after the hymn and a brief prayer in the yard, Hemphill decided to make an example. He called Eli forward, then jerked his chin at Dinah. "You two. Up here." The enslaved filed back from the center of the packed dirt, eyes lowered. Reverend Cole, visiting from town, shifted uncomfortably beside the master. "This man," Hemphill announced, letting his voice carry, "was given land and a strong Negro woman to make something of. Half a year, and what do I have? No child, no increase, only excuses." A ripple of shame moved through the white men on the porch. The black people kept their faces, carved from stone. Clay, the foreman, grinned sideways. "Maybe she's just too much woman for him, Mr. Hemphill." A quick burst of laughter, cut short by the owner's hand. Hemphill's eyes stayed on Eli. "Maybe I chose the wrong fellow. Maybe somebody else will finish what you started." Later that day, in the big house parlor, Reverend Cole sat stiff in a wooden chair, hat on his knees. "I've heard talk," he began carefully, "that men come to this woman, and misfortune follows. Accidents, illness. You know how colored folk weave tales. But when such stories touch a benefactor of the church, I must ask." Hemphill poured coffee, more for his own hands than for the pastor. "You're here to preach, not to chase kitchen gossip." Cole cleared his throat. "Sometimes the devil uses fear to keep a duty undone. Sometimes a woman's stubbornness needs firm guidance and prayer. I could speak with them both. Separate, of course." "Speak all you like," Hemphill said. "Just don't spook my people more than they already are." The next week he sent for Dr. Milton Carr from Natchez. Carr arrived with a black bag that clicked softly when he set it down. He looked Dinah over in a side room, with Hemphill and Clay watching. "Turn this way," he ordered. No greeting. No name. He prodded her belly, pressed along the old scar, peered as if she were livestock. "Healthy heart," he muttered. "Good lungs, no obvious deformity. How many months have you bled without missing?" Dinah stared past him, jaw set. "Can't rightly say, sir." "Negro women seldom keep proper track," Carr said to Hemphill, as if she were not there. "No physical reason she shouldn't conceive. Could be fear, could be stubbornness, could be superstition among the men. A determined husband and discipline would likely overcome it." Eli stood in the doorway, hearing himself reduced to husband and discipline in the same breath. That night, outside the cabins, the talk slid low and fast. Master brought a doctor to look at her like a mare, one woman whispered. Old Josiah spat in the dust. They keep pressing that woman. Something gonna keep pressing back. Mark me. Another answered. Hush that. You want the whip on your back? They already say she cursed. Martha crept into Dinah's bunk and buried her face in her aunt's shoulder. What they gonna do now? Dinah stroked the girl's hair, hand heavy with weariness. Men with books and collars and sharp knives sat in one room today, talking about my body like it was a broken plow. When they get to talking like that, child, they don't stop easy. A small pause, the night loud with crickets. Far off on the gallery of the big house, Hemphill's voice floated in the dark, talking low to Clay. If Turner can't give me what I paid for by harvest, he said, I'll find a man who will, and if she is the problem, there are other ways to cut my losses. The words slid across the yard, thin as a blade. In the cramped cabin, Dinah's eyes opened in the dark. Somewhere in her chest, a place already full of other men's plans, went colder and very, very still. The Sunday air pressed down hard. Stay where you are, Hemphill called. He walked into the middle of the yard. Turner, Dinah, up here. Eli stepped out, every stare a weight on his back. Dinah moved beside him, eyes forward. Reverend Cole stood off to the side with his Bible. This man, Hemphill said, pointing at Eli, has had extra acres and the use of this woman near half a year. No child. No increase. I don't feed failure. A couple of whites on the porch laughed. Clay, jaw wrapped in cloth, croaked. Maybe he too little for that big gal, Mr. Hemphill. Laughter broke out. Eli's face burned. Dinah's did not change. Reverend Cole started. Brother Hemphill, perhaps not behind doors, Hemphill cut in. They all eat off my land. They can learn from my losses. He turned to Dinah. Unbutton your dress. A low murmur moved through the women. Dinah did not move. Show them your sound, he pressed. Dr. Carr seen you. Nothing wrong that a proper wife and husband can't fix. At last, her hands lifted. She opened the front of her dress just enough to show the pale seam of an old cut running straight down from breastbone into shadow. Dr. Carr stepped close and brushed the scar with 2 fingers. Healed, he said. I see no reason. Dinah's head tipped back. When she spoke, her voice had an old weight in it. You cut me once already, she said. Different place, same white apron. I watched you wipe your knife on my blood and call it help. Carr jerked his hand away. The yard went so quiet they could hear the flies. You don't remember, she went on. Cypress Row, rain on the roof. You said my womb was property under repair. I heard you then. A shiver moved through the people. Clay, spooked, lunged with a rope. She talking devil, he rasped. Tie her. Preacher can pray. He looped the rope round her wrists and yanked. Thunder cracked. The mare tied to the corner post reared. Rotten wood tore loose. The post swung and smashed into Clay's back. He hit the dirt. Men grabbed for the horse, the dragging post, his kicking legs. Then he sagged. When the dust settled, Dinah stood where the post had just swept, rope slack on her arms, chest lifting, but steady. Eli heard his own voice. You near killed her with that nonsense. Hemphill rounded on him. Mind yourself, Turner. She's a woman, Eli said, louder now. Not some cursed mule to break in front of folks. Reverend Cole shut his Bible. Dr. Carr stared, as if she had reached across years to seize him. That night, in the big house, Hemphill said, If this story runs loose, they'll call this place bewitched. I'll lose buyers. Carr answered, Call it what you like. I won't cut her again. Not here." Reverend Cole murmured, "Maybe the Lord is warning you, Silas." Hemphill stared into his glass. "Warning I heed is about money. If she won't give profit here, she can give it somewhere else. Downriver." In the cabin, Dinah lay awake, wrists raw. Martha whispered, "Auntie, they gonna kill you." "No," Dinah said. "They're scared I won't die how they planned." Far off, the river pulled at its banks, as if it had heard their words and was waiting. The yard stayed unsettled for weeks after that Sunday. Work went on, but people glanced at the spot where the post had fallen, as if the ground itself remembered. Hemphill ordered the talk stopped. Any hand caught repeating stories about Dinah, and the foreman's rope got a taste of the lash. In his account book, he scratched out "breeding woman" beside her name and wrote only "field." On paper, the problem was solved. It wasn't. Eli kept his distance the first few nights, sleeping out by the tool shed, ribs aching where the whip had landed. But in the heat of the afternoons, he drifted toward the women's quarters, under the excuse of fixing a hinge or carrying firewood, and ended up on the step outside Dinah's door. "You said it isn't you," he told her one day, not quite looking at her. "All this mess around you. Then what is it?" She shelled peas without pausing. "Men cut on me, prayed over me, laid their weight on me like I was soil," she said quietly. "Soil don't stay the same when you pour blood and fear into it. It answers. Maybe my body is where that answer sits. Maybe I'm just the place it comes through." He had no language for that. He only knew that every time he had gone to her with numbers in his head, acres, debts, what Hemphill owed him, his own bones had paid the price. Around them, small, specific things kept happening. A little boy with a deep, rattling cough was moved to her pallet for warmth one cold night. By morning, his breathing was clear, while 2 other sick children in the next cabin worsened. A spark jumped from the stove one dry evening and took the roof of a storage shed in moments. The flames ran along the row, licking dry shingles. But when they reached Dinah's cabin, the wind shifted, driving the fire back on itself. Later, men muttered about drafts and luck. The women crossed themselves in their own way. A young field hand, proud of his strength, joked that if Turner could not manage Dinah, he would. He stepped over her threshold with a grin, and the rotten plank beneath him gave way. His leg snapped so clean, the bone pushed against the skin. No one else had ever broken through that board. "See?" an old man whispered that night. "It ain't color or rank. It's what's in a man's mind when he walks toward her." White men wrote other explanations. In Dr. Carr's notebook, a neat line appeared. Negro female Dinah. Pronounced scar. No proven fertility. Surrounding population attributes accidents to her presence. Likely hysteria. Contagion of superstition. Note: subject's uncanny reference to my former post on Cypress Row, troubling but may reflect confused memory. Reverend Cole wrestled with it in his own way. He drafted a careful letter to a senior minister in Natchez. "On a local estate, there is a colored woman, whom both whites and Negroes connect with repeated misfortunes among men. I seek guidance. Should we address this as spiritual error, or remove her quietly to avoid inflaming native superstition?" The reply advised restraint. Do not, it suggested, lend church authority to Negro tales. If discipline and prayer failed, relocation was wise. Eli tried the respectable path. He went up to the big house, hat in hand, and faced Hemphill across the desk that still smelled of pipe smoke. "Sir," he said, voice flat from rehearsing, "she pulls her weight in the fields and in the kitchen. Maybe let that be enough. Let the breeding talk go. I'll work off what I owe, same as any man." Hemphill studied him. You think I bought that woman for the pleasure of her company? He said at last. I pay taxes on every back on this place. Her back was priced for children. You want me to take a loss because you turned squeamish? It ain't squeamish, Eli muttered. It's cost. Every time someone pushes this, something breaks that you can't mend. Hemphill's eyes hardened. The only thing breaking around here is my patience. If she won't earn here, she'll earn somewhere else. Downriver they don't fuss so much. Word of that decision flowed to the cabins before sunset. Martha clutched Dinah's arm. They gonna ship you off where we can't find you, she said, eyes huge. They say lower down the river, folks die, and nobody even writes it. Dinah sat very still. Men forget to write all kinds of things, she answered. But the places remember. Cyprus remembered. This place remembers. If they haul me to another bank, that water will know what it's carrying. 2 days later, a wagon rattled into the yard. Dr. Carr climbed down, not alone this time. A young assistant followed, lugging a small wooden chest that chimed faintly with metal inside. The sound of the latches made Dinah's hands go cold. For a heartbeat, she smelled carbolic and blood and Louisiana rain, heard again the scrape of steel on a table years ago. Out by the kitchen door, Eli watched the chest pass and felt the hair rise on his arms. In Hemphill's ledger, under Dinah's name, a fresh note waited for a date. To be disposed of, transferred. From the yard it looked like talk about cotton. Inside the big house it was a hearing over one absent woman. Silas Hemphill sat with his ledger. Dr. Carr set down a small chest. Reverend O'Cole held his Bible. Clay watched from the window. Mr. Hemphill, Carr began, the woman shows scarring. A small procedure could improve her chances of bearing. You mean cut her, Clay said. I mean correct her, Carr replied. She is strong. Patients like her survive. Cole shifted. There is also what we heard from her mouth, about another place, another operation. Hemphill waved that away. I bought Dinah to have children. Instead, I have tales, accidents, and a foreman drinking soup. I want this settled. I need a clean room, restraints, some laudanum, Carr said. The pastor may pray if it helps, but I must work without interruption. If anything is done, Cole added, it should be under scripture. The colored must see one hand. In the quarters, the news came blunt. They gon' lay Aunt Dinah on a board and cut till she do what they want, someone whispered. Women ringed her palate. You could run to the swamp, one murmured. And when they bring dogs, another answered. Martha clung to her skirt. Tell Eli to stop it. Ain't he your husband? A man can stand in a doorway, Dinah said. This house sits on other men. He can't hold it up alone. Next day, Clay and two hands led her to an old storeroom scrubbed bare. Table, bottles, chair for the preacher. Her wrists were tied. Eli waited by the door. Hemphill stood behind him. Dinah, Cole said, we aim to help you become what the Lord intended. Yield, and it will be for your good. She looked at the metal on Carr's tray. He dipped a cloth, then chose to keep her awake. Hold her, he ordered. Two black women, pressed into service, set their hands on her shoulders. Carr stepped forward. Wait, Eli's voice cut through the room. Speak, Hemphill snapped. If you cut her and she dies on that board, Eli said, folks in Natchez won't call it medicine. They'll say you butchered a woman to force children out of her. You'll lose more than one field hand. This is a proper operation, Carr hissed. Blood looks the same either way, Eli answered. On the floor, it won't care what you named it. In that pause, Dinah lifted her head. You cut me once already, doctor, she said. On another place. Lantern swinging. My legs tied. You said, if this fails, no one need know. Carr flinched. She couldn't remember, he began. I remember hands, she cut in. Metal where it had no right. My body remembers. Silence fell. Hemphill shut the ledger. Enough. I won't risk my name on this. No knives. If she gives no children, she won't be a breeder. She'll go downriver and work for someone else. Carr rose. Cole sagged a little. Clay's eyes lit at the thought of a river trip. The women untied Dinah's wrists. They sent folks downriver to disappear, Martha whispered. Places where people vanish remember, Dinah said. They just don't keep books. Outside, Clay was shouting for a wagon. In Hemphill's ledger, a new line appeared beside her number. To be transported by boat. Nothing more. They came for her after dark. Clay had his collar and bandage, lantern in one hand, chain in the other. Dinah stepped out already dressed. When they scrubbed the storeroom that morning, she had known the road would end at the river. Iron went on her ankles. Eli was sent onto the wagon. You watch it through, Clay said. Man signs, man rides. The track to the landing was ruts and roots. First drops turned dust to smear. The Mississippi growled ahead. A flatboat waited, 2 black boatmen at the poles. Dinah looked at the water, then at Eli. You can stay, she said. Say you saw me go. I climbed up when they chained you, he answered. I ain't climbing down. They pushed off. Current caught them. Lantern flame leaned, then whipped. Rain came fine, then hard. The boat bucked. Clay laughed once. A cross gust hit. A bowline snapped like a shot. One pole flew from a man's hands. The flatboat swung, nose toward a black stump. Hold her, Clay shouted, grabbing the chain at Dinah's ankle as the deck rolled. They struck the snag. One boatman went straight over. A splash, then nothing. Clay's feet slid. His weight dropped onto the iron, dragging Dinah to the rim. For a heartbeat, they hung there. Dinah pulled forward, Eli locked at her waist, Clay kicking over the river. Let go, Eli yelled. Wet metal bit, then slipped. Cloth tore. His hand closed on air. He went backward into the dark. One slap of water, then only the river. Rain thickened. A low wave washed over the planks, knocked Eli down. He yanked her with him. She caught herself on the chain and planted both feet. Later, one man swore the boat settled right there, as if her weight nailed it. Silas Hemphill stood at the stern, hat low, watching her like freight. The flatboat lurched again. The lantern flew from his hand and died. Lightning lit the deck. In that flat flash, you could see it. Eli around Dinah. Dinah upright, iron biting. Hemphill reaching for the same chain. His fingers closed. The next heave lifted him. For a second, he hung from her, like another load she had not chosen. Then a rotten plank gave under his boots. He slid, dragged the chain, tore at her skin, and went over. No scream. Just water, taking a man who had spoken of that river as if it were his ditch. After that, the storm tired. Rain fell straight. The flatboat, half full, quit spinning and let the current pull it nose first. They grounded on a bar, then bumped to a low bank. Eli climbed onto mud and turned back. The chain clinked as he helped, Dinah over. Walking home by lantern, road sucking at their boots, he kept seeing the same picture. Hemphill's hand on that chain, the way the river took him and left the woman he had tried to sell. In the county books, it would shrink to 4 words. Accidental drowning. No foul play. Next time, we'll look at what those words did, how they turned a night of chain and water and one stubborn body into something safe to file, washing her from the record. Dinah, Eli, and 2 boatmen walked up the lane toward River Bend, clothes stiff and cold, cabins emptied. People stepped aside, counting who returned and who did not. Caroline Hemphill came down from the gallery in her nightdress. "Where's my husband?" Her eyes slid from Eli's torn sleeve to the snapped iron on Dinah's ankle. Eli tried to tell it straight. Wind, broken rope, spinning boat, dark water. But every word sounded like excuse. When he finished with, "The river took him," Caroline slapped him hard enough to jerk his head. "The river doesn't take men," she said. "Men are lost by fools." By noon, the sheriff was there with a clerk and a ledger. He heard Eli, then the boatman. He did not ask Dinah anything. His pen scratched out. S. Hemphill, drowned in storm. No sign of foul play. Clay's name went in another column as missing, presumed dead. No one wrote what his neck had suffered before the boat left shore. 2 days later, Caroline's lawyer came from Natchez. In the parlor, he talked of liens and pledged cotton. When Eli's name came up, the lawyer said, "A poor white who lives when the master drowns invites talk. Move him to the worst ground and keep him watched. If he wanders off, let him. If he stays, he keeps quiet." For Dinah, the advice was shorter. Take her out of the breeding lists. Put her with the field hands. Change how she's written. No more nickname, just an initial. So in the next inventory she became D, female, 35, sound for field labor. The line that once called her breeding woman was crossed through with one stroke of ink. It looked neat. To those who could read it, it cut. In the quarters, the story ran hotter. Ben, one of the boatmen, told the night in hoarse whispers, how the chain bit, how the owner's fingers slid off wet iron. He never said, "Curse." He only muttered, "Water knows when it's full." A month later, Ben was sent down river without warning. After that, near White Ears, the story shrank to "Storm took the boss." Among their own, people lowered their voices and said, "You hear what the river did for her?" Eli now worked the sour strip by the tree line. Overseers rode past more often, counting his rows. Nights, he saw Hemphill's hat vanish into black water and woke with his hand locked on nothing. He and Dinah crossed paths, in the rows, at the well, by the cookhouse door. No one spoke of vows. Once, passing her with a bucket, he murmured, "They wrote him clean in their book." She said, "Books don't hold all the ghosts." Beyond River Bend, the country split. Soldiers in blue and gray moved on distant roads, and talk of freedom slipped through the hedges. In that noise, one place changing hands was just another note in a clerk's stack. So it became easy to shove a single woman and a failed tenant deeper into the pile, to let their names fade into initials and scraps of talk. For now. Because somewhere between Caroline's veils and the first Union riders at the gate, Dinah's trace grows thin in the record. And that thinness, the way she almost disappears, is what will one day make someone bent over those ledgers stop and whisper, "What happened to the woman the river refused?" After the war, River Bend became a line in someone else's book. A weary Freedmen's Bureau agent rode through, collecting names and complaints like dust. In one Natchez report, there's a single note. Colored woman called Dinah, the river one, formerly on Hemphill Place. Reports abuse and attempted sale downriver before war. Present whereabouts unknown. No age, no kin, no follow-up. Only that phrase, the river one. Eli's name flickers once in the same papers. E. Turner, poor white, partial disability, claims loss of land on former Hemphill plantation. In the margin, a clerk adds, speaks of judgment on the river. There is no box for that kind of truth. By 1872, Reverend Cole has grown soft-voiced and cautious. In a private letter to his replacement, he writes of one troubling case on the Hemphill estate involving a Negro woman around whom misfortunes gathered and our benefactor drowned. He warns against building doctrine on enigmas and urges his successor to keep order and discourage superstition. The letter sleeps in a church drawer for almost a century. Decades slide by. Wagons give way to trains, then paved roads. On the edge of all that change, elders sit on porches when the air cools, repeating what they remember and what they were warned to forget. In 1937, a field worker from the Federal Writers Project knocks on a sagging door near Natchez. A woman who calls herself Martha Johnson opens it. On the government sheet, she's only female, about 90, ex-slave. On the onion-skin transcript, 3 words are underlined: Big Dinah, River Bend. They wanted her to make babies for the master, Martha says, but every man came at her. Wrong ended up broke or gone. Then they tried cutting her, praying her, sending her downriver. River took them first. In the printed WPA book, that line becomes misfortune on a boat. But in the archive, someone has penciled 2 faint words in the margin: River Wife. Half a century later, under humming lights in a Jackson reading room, historian Dr. Elaine Porter studies reproductive violence against enslaved women. She orders Hemphill's ledgers, Cole's letters, the Bureau's reports, and Martha's transcript. Bit by bit, a shape emerges. Dinah, breeding woman, no issue. Accidental drowning of S. Hemphill. Dinah, the River One, niece to Big Dinah. The pieces never touch, yet they echo each other like distant bells. In her notebook, Elaine writes, "What do we call a woman whose body refused the task slavery assigned to it? Monster? Miracle? Or someone who would not yield?" Beneath that, she adds, "If I cut the river from this story, I make it cleaner and false." Before the last chapter, she leans back and asks herself aloud, "Whose comfort am I protecting if I erase the part where the river remembers?" The question hangs in the hum of microfilm and fluorescent light, waiting for whoever reads next to answer. Dr. Elaine Porter kept returning to that penciled phrase, River Wife, because it felt like someone, somewhere, had refused to let a woman be erased. Her article draft began cautiously, full of citations and hedges. A figure possibly named Dinah, fragmentary testimony, unverified accounts of resistance. But every time she read it aloud, the prose sounded like a soft cloth laid over a bruise. Too careful, too tidy, too close to the old habit of sanding women down to the size of a footnote. One night, she pushed aside her notes and opened the WPA transcript again. Martha's voice, or the memory of it, seemed to rise from between the lines. They wanted her babies. River wanted her free. Elaine underlined that sentence until the paper thinned. She began the final chapter differently. No introduction, no apology, just a simple assertion. Some lives are recorded only where the formal record fails. From there, she traced the outline. A woman sold from Louisiana to Mississippi, a scar that followed her. Men who approached her with ownership in mind and met unaccounted harm. A riverboat night that official language shrank to accidental drowning. And a post-war absence so complete it became its own presence. She wrote, "Whether or not Dinah intended the harm attributed to her is irrelevant. What matters is the way her community understood it. Her body refused exploitation. In a system that demanded reproduction on command, that refusal registered as danger. But to those who lived beside her, it read as survival, a kind of power not granted by the law, but recognized by the land." When she finished the draft, she felt the old academic instincts tugging. Remove the river, soften the edges, insist on uncertainty. But something steadier pushed back. The next morning she drove south, following the highway until it bent close to the Mississippi. She parked where the bank dropped down to a mud-slick path and walked until she found a place where the water folded the sunlight into a dark shine. She stood there a long time, imagining 1858, a flatboat half swamped, ropes snapping, men shouting, one woman locked in at the ankle, refusing to go under. She pictured that same woman walking away through the mud with nothing but breath in her lungs and a story in the world that no ledger could hold still. Elaine gathered a handful of river stones and set them in her palm. "You don't owe me anything," she said quietly, unsure who she was speaking to. Dinah, the river, the long chain of women whose bodies had been sites of work, violence, and quiet rebellion. "But I won't write you small." Back in her office, she completed the last paragraph. Dinah does not return to the record after 1865, but absence is not erasure. It is choice, flight, survival, or simply the limit of what white ink was willing to capture. That she slipped beyond the page is not failure, it is fact. And sometimes fact leaves a shadow strong enough to follow. Before submitting the manuscript, she added one more line to the acknowledgments. "To the unnamed woman known as Big Dinah, River Wife, the River One, this history bends toward you." She clicked send. Outside, rain began to fall in thin, steady strokes. Nothing dramatic, nothing like the storm that once swallowed a man whole. But the sound against the window carried a rhythm that felt older than weather, older than ink. Something like a memory surfacing. Something like a river answering its name.